So let's cultivate a bodhicitta motivation. So all of our happiness in samsara comes from other living beings, because without them doing the various jobs they do in samsara, without the people that are friends and relatives who directly take care of us, we wouldn't have good health, we wouldn't know anything because we wouldn't have teachers. We would be in a pretty sorrowful state. So that's one way in which sentient beings have been kind to us. Another way is that they are the basis upon which we generate bodhicitta. So if we sincerely aspire for full awakening, bodhicitta is a necessary ingredient, a necessary cause for full awakening. And we don't generate bodhicitta, the aspiration to attain full awakening, in order to benefit all sentient beings most effectively. We don't, generate that altruistic intention in regards to empty space. It's in regard to living beings. And so we depend on each and every living being to generate bodhicitta, because bodhicitta has the altruistic intention towards each and every sentient being. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche was quite specific that if we leave even one sentient being out of our bodhicitta, then we don't have bodhicitta, then we can't attain awakening. So in that way, he said, our awakening depends on each and every sentient being. Yeah. So each cockroach, each donkey, each person who harms you, each person who cares about you, we can't leave anybody out. So we have to have a very big mind here to generate love and compassion towards each being. And that really necessitates learning how to forgive others, learning how to release whatever grudges we hold against others, or whatever misconceptions we hold about ourselves that arose when others perhaps mistreated us. So those issues within ourselves we have to make peace with in order to progress on the Bodhisattva path. So let's try and expand our mind in that way to include all beings and generate bodhicitta, and use that as our reason for being together today. So I remember way back, I don't know when it was, late 70s, early 80s, when I first heard Lama Zopa say that about the kindness of each and every sentient being and how our awakening, our enlightenment depended on each and every being. And after that, I was in Manali and took a walk into the different fields, that the farmers were growing. It was a very beautiful sunny day. And I sat down in one of the fields, just to think a little bit. And that field had lots of grasshoppers. And so there were all these grasshoppers jumping, from one, plant to the other plant, all around the field. And I remembered what Rinpoche said about our awakening depending on each and every sentient being. And I looked at those grasshoppers and I thought, my awakening depends on those grasshoppers. Yeah, it was a thought I had never had before. Yeah, and then also realizing that the beings who were born in grasshopper bodies that lifetime weren't always going to be grasshoppers. Yeah, that sometime in the future, well, grasshoppers really don't live very long, do they? That they would soon die and be reborn in another body. And, I thought, oh, maybe, well, I hope, by my extremely limited Dharma practice, maybe in a future life, may I benefit them when they were human beings. So it really changed my mind about how I relate to sentient beings. I had to have a much bigger perspective. Yeah, yeah, it really shocked me, so to put. Sorry, have to fix my hearing aid. Oh, now that's much better. Okay, so I wanted, since you requested teachings about Buddhism, one teacher, many traditions, I really wanted to talk about bodhicitta, and not just bodhicitta, but how the traditions teach the meditation on love and compassion, which are two of the dominant causes for bodhicitta. So I want to go through that today and show how the Mahayana tradition, especially what we practice in Tibetan Buddhism and also in Chinese Buddhism, depends on the way that love and compassion were taught in the Pali tradition. And that the four immeasurables, which we recite, we just recited them a few minutes ago, but we recited almost every meditation session we do, how that is also practiced in the Pali tradition, and then how the Sanskrit tradition built on that to get the meditations about bodhicitta. So, often many people I found don't know that the Pali tradition contains teachings on the four immeasurables. And one time, must have been 93, 94, His Holiness was teaching, and, at a big public event over a few days. And in the evening, various Westerners and some Tibetans too were giving Dharma talks. So one evening, Sharon Salzburg, who's an IMS teacher, gave a really lovely talk about metta, or love. And after that, one of my long-time Tibetan a Western Tibetan Buddhist scholar and practitioner, said to me, I was so shocked. She gave this wonderful talk about love. I had no idea the Pali tradition talked about this. And I thought, this is quite indicative of our ignorance about the other traditions, which is really a pity. So I want to talk about that. It's very, very brief. If you want to know more, I'm reading from chapter 11 in Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions. And it's also explained in more detail in, volume 5. What is it? Homage to Great Compassion. See, I told you. Huh? Praising great compassion. See, I told you I can't remember the names of my own books. In praise of great compassion. Okay, so there it talks about the four immeasurables and how to generate bodhicitta. And then in volume 6, Courageous Compassion, it talks about the perfections or the paramis in the Pali tradition, and how, what they are. There's a different version that's quite similar to the Mahayana one, and how that's practiced in the Pali tradition and in our tradition. It's very interesting. Yeah. Okay, so first the four immeasurables. Okay, so I'm going to read from the book and then give some commentary. Okay, so the four immeasurables are spoken in many of the Pali suttas and also in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification, by the very famous Acharya Buddhaghosa, who lived in the 5th century AD. Okay, so this practice of the four immeasurables is often done in the Theravada tradition as a way to generate concentration, specifically the dhyanas, or jhanas. But they're also done to, ease our own heart and expand our own mind. So one way to practice the four immeasurables enriches our relationships with others. So here, love has the aspect of friendliness towards sentient beings and wishes them to be well and happy. So in the Pali tradition, they say this should be our basic attitude towards living beings. In other words, how our first impression, our first response when we meet any sentient being is one of love, friendliness, wanting them to be happy. Okay, so this really asks us to check our own mind. How often when we meet people is our first thought, are they going to like me? Or what do I have to do to impress them? Or what are they going to do to harm me? Can I trust them? It's very interesting to look at our first response when we meet anybody and how so much of that, our self-centered mind, comes up then about, is this person going to help me or harm me? Okay, and here, to train the mind, so our first response to anybody is friendliness, wishing them well. That's quite a mental training, huh? Yeah. But it's when we really put our mind to it, it changes how we relate to others, how we look at the world. Yeah. Okay, then second, when seeing sentient beings suffering, we respond with compassion, thus abandoning fear and disgust, and we do what we can to be of assistance. So the usual MO when we meet somebody, friendliness. wishing them well. When we see them suffering, then to respond with compassion, wishing them to be free of that suffering. And to have compassion, we often have to eliminate fear and disgust, especially if we see people who are very sick, people who are injured, people in very bad straits mentally, who are constantly, wigged out about something. It takes a lot to greet these people without fear and disgust. But, here's a sentient being who's suffering. I know what that's like. When I am miserable, I like when people understand me. So let's offer some understanding to this person. One time His Holiness was teaching in India, and he had been talking about bodhicitta. This was in Bodh Gaya, and in the old days. So we were all sleeping in tents in this field, which is now where the Kala Chakra teaching ground. But in those days, it was an empty field with dust. And we were walking back towards our tent, and there was an Indian beggar who had just fallen down. He was on the ground. And so we went up to him to see what was the matter, if he needed water or, he was injured or what. And it was quite interesting because there were some Tibetans around who were saying, no, don't go near him. Yeah. But we felt these were lay Tibetans, kind of like, don't go near. But we thought, no, we have to. Here's somebody who just fell on the ground. We got to see what's wrong with him. So, we gave him some water. He got up, he went on. But I was really struck by, how easy it is when we see somebody like that to just go, yeah, well, I don't want to have anything to do with them. Somebody else can help them. Okay, then third, when we witness the happiness of sentient beings, their success, their virtue, their good qualities, our response is joy. In other words, we rejoice with them in their opportunities and virtue. So this is the opposite of jealousy. Okay? And then when our aim for others' welfare is not accomplished, when we're trying to help somebody and they say, yes, but, or they say, mind your own business, or they say, who the do you think you are telling me what to do? So or even when we give good advice and they follow it, but, it doesn't turn out very well. In other words, when others' welfare is not accomplished, or when they aren't receptive to our help, instead of responding with anger, to have a balanced mind, and that's equanimity. So here are the four immeasurables showing us how to relate to living beings in our daily life. When we first contact them, friendliness, love, When we see them suffer, compassion, wanting to help, When they have good things, instead of being jealous, rejoicing with them. And then fourth, when we're trying to benefit them, but they aren't receptive or things don't turn out well, instead of, getting upset, maintaining equanimity. This is, when you think about it in terms of your own life, do you think practicing these four is easy? In terms of how you respond to things and people in your life? This is a tall practice, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so let's continue in the Pali tradition. So here we're having some quotes from Visuddhimagga. So love has the aspect of friendliness. Its proximate cause, in other words, its close cause, what gives rise to it, its proximate cause is seeing others as lovable. When it succeeds, when we succeed in generating love, it eliminates malice. Yeah? When it fails, when we don't succeed in generating love, it degenerates into selfish, affectionate desire. Okay, so there's this fondness for somebody, but instead of really being friendly and wishing well for them, it's I wish you well because you benefit me. So it's selfish, affectionate love. Yeah, that's what they call love in the modern world. You know, that thing where you inflate the good qualities of somebody and they're everything you ever needed. Yeah, until reality strikes. Okay. So the latter, the selfish, affectionate desire, is the affliction of clinging attachment, which is often called love in society. Genuine love spreads to both those who treat us well and those who don't. Yeah, it's a tall call, but that's how we need to train the mind. Okay, that real love is firm and does not waver according to our mood or to how others treat us. So when we're in a bad mood, we still wish others well. Yeah. It's ready to help, but does not coerce others into fulfilling our wishes. Oh boy. Yeah. When we have uh, that sticky, clingy love, yeah, we want to mold the other person so they become what we want them to become. Yeah, and this especially happens with children. Parents don't mean bad, but they want their children to have everything they didn't have. So it looks like love for their child, but very often the child's version of happiness is not their parents' version of happiness. Yeah. And the parents want their child to become an engineer so that they'll have a good job and job security and enough money and they'll be successful in society. But the child wants to be an artist and they don't care so much about it. Yeah. So, but the parent keeps trying to, mold the child into what you want them to be. Okay. So you have to have some compassion for parents. They means well, dear, as Lama Yeshe would say. But, yeah, it's based on self-centeredness in there, okay? So combining love with the understanding of not self demolishes any sense of possession. So people are not my friend, my relative, my whatever relationship we are with them. So this love knows that ultimately there is no possessor or person to possess, no substantially existent person to give love to or to receive love from. And the highest love wishes beings to have the highest happiness, nirvana. Yeah, so when you really get into generating love, you see that the, the object of your love is not who you think they are. You're seeing a real person there. And actually, it's just a karmic bubble, a result of whatever karma they created that is ripening at that moment. So there's no person with a fixed personality who you're always going to have the same relationship with. Yeah. And there's no inherently existent me, yeah, who is giving love either. Yeah. Whoever I am is changing moment by moment. I'm not always going to be the person that I identify as being in this life. Yeah? So when you bring the understanding of no self, of selflessness, into the meditation here on this first immeasurable and all four of them, it really changes the flavor. Yeah. Especially if we're getting quite clingy in love to somebody, with somebody else. Yeah. Okay, so now going on to compassion. So it has the aspect of allaying suffering. Yeah, its proximate cause is seeing helplessness in those overwhelmed by suffering. Here we mean dukkha, the dukkha of samsara. So this doesn't just focus on people who are sick or poor or injured. Yeah, we have to have compassion also for the rich and the famous and so on and so forth, because those people have a whole other kind of suffering, yeah, that we don't really recognize, because we just think, oh, they're rich and famous, they have everything I don't. Yeah, but they also have some other things that we don't have, like friends and relatives asking for some money, like false friends buttering up to them so they can get something out of them, like not being able to just walk down the street alone. Yeah, you have to have bodyguards, and people are constantly coming up to you. Okay, they have a whole other kind of suffering, and very often in their families, the relationship with the children is not so good because the parents are so busy with their careers and their fame and their money that the children often feel neglected. Yeah. Okay, so when compassion succeeds, it reduces cruelty. Yeah, that's clear. When it fails, when we're trying to generate compassion, but we don't do it quite right, it produces personal distress. Okay, so personal distress is when we look at other beings suffering and then we get overwhelmed. So especially with people that we're very attached to, yeah, if they're in an automobile accident, if they get injured, if somebody criticizes your child, or your parent or whoever it is, then, we feel distress, like, oh, this is terrible, and I can't bear to see this person suffer like this, even often with respect to strangers, It's like many people don't like to go into hospitals, yeah, because it reminds them that one day they too could be a patient in the hospital. Yeah, they don't like seeing people who are sick. Mm-hmm. Okay, so because it produces this kind of personal distress. So compassion enables us to look at suffering in all of its tortuous varieties without succumbing to despair. Okay, so that means you can look at the total confusion in our world and the total mess that's happening, and not just fall into despair and say, the world's screwed, just forget it. Yeah. I can't do anything. This place is just a mess. I'm going out to have a drink. I need to self-medicate so I can handle this. Yeah. So that's what happens if our compassion isn't meeting the grade. Yeah. Okay, so compassion motivates us to reach out to others directly or indirectly in order to alleviate their suffering. So directly is by you know the person and you go to help. Indirectly is maybe you tell somebody else to help them, you give a donation to an organization, something like that. Compassion does not favor some and exclude others. Whoa. It isn't limited to those who are obviously experiencing suffering. And it does not blame others for their suffering, but realizes that suffering ultimately stems from ignorance. So this compassion has to see, why is that person suffering? It's not because they're bad. It's not because they're foolish. It's not because they don't know how to control their mind, and if they only listened to me, they would be okay. Yeah, it's because of ignorance. Yeah, but it's interesting how very often we blame people for their suffering, especially when somebody is poor. Yeah, in America, they bear the brunt of so much criticism. It's not just seeing, oh, these people lack resources for their family. It's they're lazy, they're stupid, they're uneducated, they spend their money recklessly without even knowing the person or their situation. We attribute their poverty to their personal choices. Yeah. But often somebody's poverty is because their parents were poor and their grandparents were poor. And sometimes poverty is due to prejudice in society or an economic downturn or some negative karma ripening and you lose your job or whatever. Yeah. It has to do with lack of education opportunities for minorities. Yeah. But instead of seeing that people's cooperative conditions, their life circumstances, contribute to their misery and often are the cause of it, we blame the people themselves. Yeah. And then the people who are rich and famous, well, that is due to their own ability. They're intelligent, they're attractive, they're talented, they're this and that. Yeah. We don't think that many of the people who are rich, it's because of what their parents did or their grandparents, and it's inherited wealth that doesn't have anything to do with their own abilities. Yeah, it has to do simply with what family they happen to be born into. Yeah. So these kind of prejudices against other people are really, they're not very realistic. Yeah, because we don't know the situations. Mm-hmm. Okay. So joy, the third immeasurable, delights at the happiness and good fortune of others and opposes jealousy. Meditating on joy enables us to see the goodness in the world. So joy is characterized by bringing joy. Its proximate cause is sentient being success. When our joy succeeds, it reduces jealousy and boredom. But when it fails, it produces overexcitement. Okay, so if our joy is mixed in with attachment, we get this giddy excitement, like, oh, good, it's like, wow. I remember my sister-in-law telling me when she when she found out that her daughter was marrying this other couple's son, and when she talked to the other mother, the mother of the son, and she's the mother, that the both mothers were cheering and shouting, and they were so happy their kids were getting married. So that kind of, it's, you rejoice in somebody's happiness, but it's a little bit, over the top, isn't it? Okay, equanimity, the fourth immeasurable here, is a balanced mind that remains tranquil and steady no matter what we encounter. It is not apathetic indifference that builds walls to protect us from pain. So we have to be careful of this. Yeah, it's easy to think that we say, oh, I have equanimity, but actually what we've succeeded in doing is becoming indifferent. Yeah, we don't like to feel vulnerable to other people, so we build walls. We're detached. I am not attached. Yeah. Whether they praise me or love me, doesn't matter. Whether they call me names, doesn't matter. I have equanimity. But actually what's going on is like our ego is feeling very shaky, and we want others' approval and we don't want their disapproval. Yeah, but we hide that with the walls of saying we have equanimity. In other words, we don't let other people in. So this is an easy thing to fall into that we have to be careful about. Yeah. And when we build walls to protect us from, either love, affection or criticism, approval or criticism for others, again, you can see what's behind that is the self-centered attitude. Yeah. And so one way to overcome that is put the attention on other people instead of always keeping it on what do they think of me? Do they like me? Do I fit in? All of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And, if we generate actual equanimity, then we don't have this fear of criticism and clinging to approval, because we realize that what other people think about us is just their thoughts. It doesn't make us virtuous. It doesn't make us non-virtuous. It doesn't make us worthwhile. It doesn't make us not worthwhile. Okay, equanimity allows our spiritual practice to stay on track without being buffeted around by excitement or intense emotions. Clinging to nobody, equanimity gives space to appreciate everything. So it's not that the absence of clinging is like, I don't care. It opens space, yeah? It's characterized by promoting the aspect of balance towards beings. Its proximate cause, this is quite interesting, its proximate cause is seeing the owner of karma. So in one of the Pali Suttas it says, beings are owners of their own karma. Okay, so I can't remember, the kind of heirs to their own karma. I don't remember how exactly the quote goes. But the idea is that when we see that other people are who they are, and we are who we are, dependent on causes and conditions, many of which are our previous actions, then we don't get so attached and repulsed because we see this is just the result of actions. And these sentient beings cannot go beyond their own karma, Of course, unless we purify, unless we make an effort to generate more virtue, people can't go beyond it. And that means when it ripens, when your karma ripens, you can't unripen it. Before it ripens, you can purify it, the negative karma. We can also destroy our virtuous karma before it ripens too, so we have to be careful, okay? But to see that it's not like people are, and this includes us, we're not independent entities who just sit there and with a quiet, clear, unbiased mind look at situations and make good decisions. No, we're sentient beings, and we're attached to happiness. Have aversion to unhappiness. We operate completely within that paradigm of how do I grasp what I want? How do I push away what I don't want? And then, the habitual actions that we did in the past, slant how we look at situations, influence the decisions we make, influence what situations we find ourselves in the present. So when we see sentient beings like that, it gives some space in our mind. We don't judge them as if they were independent entities who could operate independent of, the way their mind thinks and the actions they've done and the habits they have. Okay. So when equanimity succeeds, it makes anger and attachment subside. When it fails, it produces apathy, what's called unknowing equanimity. Okay, so just apathy, I don't care. Okay. Then, oh my goodness, I was going to talk about more. Let's see. I mean, just because this is so interesting, how they do it in the Pali tradition, and I think it gives us a really nice outline for how to relate to people in our own lives. And so every time we meet somebody, or when we go into a situation, we know we're going to meet people to prepare, friendly. I'm going to have a friendly appearance. I'm going to welcome that person, and you can see how His Holiness Dalai Lama practices that, because he says he regards everybody as a friend. Okay, let's go on. Okay. Oh, well, this, we don't have so much time. I'm going to skip that. Okay. Okay. So then to talk about the four immeasurables in the Sanskrit tradition. So I'm kind of assuming that those of you at Jamyang are practitioners and you're familiar with the four immeasurables. And at least in the Tibetan tradition, we have two versions of them, a short version and a long version. So in the short version, which was the one we recited before the teachings this morning, we first generate love. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. Then compassion. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. Then joy. may all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. And then equanimity at the end, may all sentient beings be free of bias, attachment, and anger. Okay? And so that corresponds with the way, the order that they're given in the Pali tradition as well. But we also see, for example, when we do the Chenrezig practice, yeah, that there's a long version of the four immeasurables, and in that, they're in a different order. We start out with equanimity. So equanimity, which was at the end of the short version, is now at the beginning of the long version. Okay, let me read the long version here. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were to abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. It's the first thing. Yeah. Then, may they abide in this way. I shall cause them to abide in this way. And Buddha, or, Chenrezig, please inspire me to be able to do so. So all four immeasurables have those four lines in it. They all start out with how wonderful. Second line, may they. Yeah. Third line, I shall cause them to. And fourth line, a request to the Buddha to inspire us to be able to do so. Okay, so compassion, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings had happiness and its causes. So first the wish. May they have these. Yeah, actually the first one is just saying how wonderful it is. The second one is wishing them to have it. May they have these. I shall cause them to have these. I'm going to get involved. And Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. In other words, Lord Buddha, this is a big undertaking. I need some inspiration, yeah, or what we call blessing. Yeah. Then the third one, how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering and its cause. Yeah, so compassion. May they be free. I shall cause them to be free. Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. And then finally, joy at the end. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were never parted from upper rebirth and liberation's excellent bliss. May they never be parted. I shall cause them never to be parted. Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Okay, so why the difference in order with where equanimity is in these two versions? Okay. In the second version, equanimity comes in the first version, we can see from going through the Pali one why equanimity is at the end. First, we're friendly, then we have compassion if they're suffering, then we rejoice in their success, and when there's problems, then we have equanimity. Okay, so we can see how that sequence fits for that way of developing the four. Okay, the second version with equanimity at the beginning, shows that equanimity is the basis for generating the three ones that continue, that come. So in other words, by having equanimity, freeing ourselves from bias, attachment, and anger towards others, then we are open to really cultivating love for everybody on an equal basis. Yeah, we're open to cultivating compassion for everybody equally, not just for our friends. Okay, we're open to having joy at everybody's success. Yeah, even the people we don't like. Yeah. Okay, so it's showing there how equanimity is the basis. Here also, the sequence of the four immeasurables is a synopsis of the sevenfold cause and effect instruction to generate bodhicitta. Okay, so if you want to do that 7-point cause and effect instruction meditation really quickly, this is it. Okay, but when you do things quickly, it means you have to focus stronger. Okay, so how do these four map onto the 7 points? So equanimity is the precursor to the 7-point instruction. Okay, equalizing our attitude towards friends, enemies, and stranger, getting rid of the very gross attachment, anger, and apathy. So that's the meditation on equanimity that comes first. Then, in the long version, the second one we generate is love. Yeah, that covers the first 4 of the 7 points. So seeing sentient beings have all been our mothers or our parents, seeing that they've all been kind to us as our parents, wishing to repay that kindness, and then heartwarming love, seeing them as lovable. So those 4, are condensed into the immeasurable love. Yeah. Then the 5th of the 7 points is compassion. So that's the 3rd of the 4 immeasurables. And then the 6th and 7th point is of the 7 points. The 6th point is I'm going to get involved, and the 7th point is bodhicitta. And so in the in the 4 immeasurables here, the 3rd one is may all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. So may they all have upper rebirths. May they all attain nirvana. May they all attain full awakening. Okay. So that's pretty clever, don't you think? Did you ever think of that before? How those 7 related to those 4? Yeah. Okay. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about how in the Chinese tradition they generate bodhicitta, because they speak about bodhicitta a lot. Yeah. Okay. So, here's something that's interesting. Nagarjuna, in his Dasabhumika Vibhasa, his commentary on the 10 stages, he speaks of 7 factors that may cause people to generate bodhicitta, depending on their dispositions and tendencies. Okay, so think about these if they help you to generate bodhicitta. 1, being instructed by a Buddha who understands their faculties, your faculties as a disciple. So maybe when you're sitting with one of your teachers and the teachings really go boing, and you have that sensation like, you're sitting in the presence of a holy being that's talking, that understands you and is talking to you. Second thing that helps us to generate bodhicitta is observing that the Dharma is on the verge of destruction in our world and wanting to guard and protect it. Okay? So the people who were at the recent ordination in Taiwan, this was spoken of again and again, wasn't it? How, we're in a Dharma degenerating age, and it's our responsibility to preserve the Dharma for future generations. So in other words, our Dharma practice isn't just about, me and pacifying my mind and what I want to study and where I want to do retreat and what retreat I'm going to do and all the realizations I'm going to get and how people will think I'm so wonderful. Okay, that's not what's going on. But rather that we have a responsibility through our study to preserve the transmitting Dharma, and through our practice to one day be able to preserve the realizational Dharma too. Okay, and that's our responsibility as Buddhists. So, when you hear that, it makes you want to generate bodhicitta, doesn't it? Yeah. And the third, feeling compassion for suffering sentient beings. So that's clear how that will engender us to generate bodhicitta. 4, receiving instructions from a bodhisattva who influences us to generate bodhicitta. Okay, so again, this may happen in teachings. It may happen sometimes by watching other people, how they live, how they practice. Yeah, when we were in Taiwan, I have an incredible regard for she's called the manager of the temple, but she's actually the abbess of the temple that was giving the ordination. And she had a heart of generosity that was just amazing, and not just towards us. She was the one who said, oh, you need a bell and a drum for your monastery. I'll gather, my disciples and we will, cover the costs of it. Not just that, but watching how she treated everybody in there, and just her generosity was amazing. And it was very spontaneous generosity. It wasn't like really thinking, about, okay, not like my generosity where I have to go through, okay, you're going to create merit because it also always has to do something with me, the benefit I'm going to get. Okay, so yeah, because I was so stingy. Part of the reason was I was so poor, I didn't have any money. But, why didn't I have money? Because I was so stingy, karmically, You create the cause, you get the result. And so I remember Geshe Nawan Dargye, one of my first teachers, after Lama and Rinpoche, always talking about the importance of generosity. And I would walk to the marketplace from the library going down to the bazaar and Dharamsala to buy my groceries. And there were some lepers who sat on the side of the road. And they were our lepers. They lived in the community. Yeah. When there was a big Dharma event, we got visiting lepers. But these lepers were ours. We knew them. We walked past them every day. We smiled at them. I smiled at them. But give them, 25 paisa for a cup of tea, that's too much. Yeah, I can't. Because if I give, the money for a cup of tea in India, this was like the late 70s, so it did not cost very much. But my thought was, if I give to them, then I won't have. But then Geshe-la's teachings was sitting there in the back of my mind. I could hear his voice talk about the benefits of generosity as I'm going. Yeah. But here, what did I just read? Yeah, receiving instructions from a bodhisattva who influences you to generate bodhicitta. So forget bodhicitta. I was just trying to give somebody 25 pace. Yeah? But Geshe-la, the way he taught, it was like something got into me. And so sometimes I would, give the money. Yeah, because I knew that if I walked into class the next day, I would be like this if I didn't give them anything. But I also knew that they were suffering and they depended on us. Yeah. And I might have been poor, but I wasn't as poor as they were. Okay, 5. Observing the conduct of a bodhisattva and wanting to emulate it. So this is the nun I was just talking about. 6. Having performed an action of generosity that makes us recall the virtues of bodhisattvas. Okay, so sometimes we do something generous and we feel good about ourselves. And we think, wow, that's the kind of virtue bodhisattvas create, I want to become a bodhisattva. And then 7, feeling delight upon seeing or hearing about the 32 signs and 80 marks of a Buddha. So just hearing about the qualities of a Buddha's body or a Buddha's speech or a Buddha's mind, then that inspiring us to generate bodhicitta. Okay, so that's one thing that they contemplate. Now, the actual meditation in Chinese Buddhism for generating bodhicitta is called the 7-round compassion meditation, and its source is in Vasubandhu's Abhidharmakosha Vyasa, which is also in the Tibetan canon. So here you have 7 points in it, and you do these 7 points 7 times, one going forward, then going back, then going forward. Okay. So the 7 points, you start with your elders, yeah? So recall the kindness of your elders in your life, remembering each person who has taken care of you when you were an infant, when you were a toddler, all during your life, when you were sick. The person who took care of you, each person, not one person, remember each person who has taken care of you, taught you, guided you, protected you, and served as a good role model. Yeah, so to go back and really think in your life about each person who did that. Yeah. Can you think even of some of your school teachers? Maybe they didn't do everything you liked, but they did some things that really helped us. Needless to say, our parents, yeah, babysitters, extended family. And so when we first recall those people, and then we think, my elders have done so much for me. Since they have selflessly helped me, it would seem natural that I try and repay their kindness. Yeah, it would seem natural, wouldn't it? However, instead of doing that, I argue with them and cause them to worry. I don't listen to their suggestions and don't appreciate all they have done for me. I confess and regret this. So you think, you remember all this kindness, and oh yeah, I do feel some appreciation, yeah. But looking back on our life, how did I show that appreciation? Yeah, well, I forgot it was Mother's Day yesterday, so, how many of you remember to call your mother yesterday? Yeah, everybody called them. Did you call your mom? Oh, you called her the day before. That's okay. 2 days before. Okay. But you got to say Happy Mother's Day. Yeah. So, yeah. So that's important. Or we think back on our parents, and then when you became a teenager, we quarrel with them. we totally ignore them. We tell them that they're old-fashioned. They don't know what in the world they're talking about. Yeah. They say, do this, we do the opposite. Not because we want to do the opposite, but to show that we're independent and they're not going to control us. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so sometimes when we're really little, we listen to our parents and we're good kids. We become teenagers and like, don't tell me what to do. Okay, so then you confess and regret it. This is so healing, We're only on, the first of these 7, yeah, but it's so healing. And what it's doing is showing that in order to generate bodhicitta, we have to, in our mind, heal all these preceding relationships that we had. Yeah, it's so important. And often for Westerners, this is very difficult, because ever since Freud, we blame so much of our suffering on our parents. And it's really unfair, especially as Buddhists, we don't think about, we should think about their kindness. We don't, we think about the situation that they grew up in and the karma they had to live through, but we don't. We just are thinking about them in terms of me, I, my, and mine. Okay? So, you have regret for that, you do some purification, you clean it up. Yeah? So you don't just sit there and feel guilty. Yeah, there is no virtue in feeling guilty. There is no virtue in self-recrimination. Yeah, we feel regret and then we make amends. We change our attitude towards them. Yeah, and I remember, when I was doing this meditation a lot, how much it was very challenging for me. But I eventually wrote my parents a letter thanking them for being my parents. Yeah. And I did that of my own accord, which was a big thing for me. Yeah. And I could really see how healing that relationship was important, not only psychologically, but spiritually for my practice. Yeah. And really seeing that even when I was a teenager and they gave me restrictions that I felt weren't fair, they were trying to protect me. Okay, so we feel this in our heart. Excuse me. Okay. So then dedicate all your merit to your elders for the cessation of their suffering and attainment of Buddhahood. Okay. And then think about your elders in past lives. How many elders and that you had in previous lives who guided you and taught you and acted as good examples and so on. So that's the first of the 7. Okay. Then second, you recall your peers, siblings, friends, and colleagues, and consider that they have kept you company, befriended you, and assisted you when you needed help. Yeah. They were our friends. They were the people we counted on. Often, during our teenage years, they were more, they supported us more than our parents did, according to our own selfish, way of looking at things. So you think of everything that our peers and siblings and so on did for us. So recall that instead of caring about them in return, We have criticized and blamed them. Yeah. We have called them names. We have blamed all of our quarrels on them when we got in trouble. Okay. We've been inconsiderate. We've also been jealous of their successes. Okay. So confess this, purify, and then dedicate your merits to them. And then think of peers that you had in previous lives and do the same. So that's another one, yeah, to really reflect on friendships we've had. And, are we still friends with some of those people, or was there some big falling out, and what was my contribution to that? Or did we just lose touch, yeah? Or are we still friends? Or sometimes we're enemies now. Okay, then the third point, meditate in the same way regarding your juniors. So children, students, employees. Yeah, so again, thinking of everything they've done for you, then thinking of how we've acted towards them in return, having regret for that, and then repairing the relationship, generating love for them and compassion for them, and dedicating our merit for them. Okay, then, so kindness of elders, kindness of peers, yeah, then kindness of juniors. Yeah, that all makes sense. Next one, enemies of your elders. So people who have hurt, betrayed, or taken advantage of your elders. So you have to there think about their kindness and their situation and what they've done and forgive them. Yeah. And then, dedicate our merit towards them. Then 5, to do it towards our own enemies, so the people who have harmed us. And again, we can learn so much from our quote, quote, enemies. Yeah, they can often be the best teachers we've had because they show us so explicitly what we need to work on and call out the fallacy of our inflated expectations of them or of the relationship. Okay, so 5 is we do that with our enemies. 6, the enemies of our juniors. So heal those relationships. And then 7, neutral people. So people who have neither helped nor harmed us in this life, but think of their kindness, especially the kindness of strangers. And then recall that instead of repaying their kindness, we sometimes had malice and harmed them. So confess, purify, dedicate merit for them. Okay, so that's one round going through these 7. Then the next round is you start with the neutral people and you go back in the reverse order to your elders. That's the second round. Then you go down from your elders to the neutral people, third, and you go back and forth like this 7 rounds. Yeah. So I think sometimes just doing one of these 7 points in one round sometimes will take us a whole meditation session. Yeah. So take your time doing this. Yeah. Okay, then I just wanted as a closing thing for the 4 great vows in the Chinese tradition. So there's different versions of the 4 great vows. So this is one version here. Sentient beings are countless. I vow to free them. Defilements are endless. I vow to eradicate them. Dharma doors are limitless. I vow to cultivate them. The Buddha's way is supreme. I vow to attain it. So when I was working with Geshe Dadol, going over these in volume 5, when we went over them, and there we had a different version of the 4, and we also had a version of the 5. And Geshe-la, he had never heard of these great vows in the Chinese tradition. And when he read them, he said, "These are fantastic." Yeah, he was so impressed with them. But, the Tibetans don't know much about Chinese Buddhism, and the Chinese don't know much about Tibetan Buddhism. And so that's why this book, Buddhism, One Teacher, Many Traditions, is so important, trying to, show practitioners of one tradition, what they're practicing and what the people in other traditions are practicing that are very, very similar. Maybe different approaches, different words, but the point is the same. Okay, so that's just talking about bodhicitta a little bit. We didn't even get to the paramitas. Maybe sometime in the future we'll be able to get to them and talk about the paramitas in the Sanskrit tradition and also in the Pali tradition. So we have maybe 3 minutes for Q&A.
My question was about the 4 immeasurables. And I always had this question about immeasurable joy.
Mm-hmm.
Because love seems, and distinguishing it from love, it seems to be that they're kind of angling at the same thing. And if love is the wish for the happiness of the other, then wouldn't that, if we're wishing for the ultimate happiness, wouldn't that include higher rebirths, nirvana, etc.? So what's the point in what's the benefit to our practice in separating those things out?
Okay, you can see in the Pali presentation that they arise from different causes. Yeah, love arises from just knowing them and being friendly without discrimination. Joy arises from really celebrating their opportunities and their good qualities. Okay, in the Sanskrit tradition, joy very much seems to be included in love. Yeah, but joy is really emphasizing the goals of our Dharma practice: upper rebirth, liberation, awakening.
What is meant by compassion going wrong?
By compassion going wrong is instead of the focus remaining on the person who's suffering, the focus turns on ourself, and I'm in so much pain seeing them suffer. I can't bear to see them suffer. So the focus of the suffering is no longer on the other person. It's on us, and we're suffering. And when we get stuck in our own suffering because of seeing somebody else suffer, we become paralyzed and we can't benefit them. I'm so upset. This happened to my child or my partner or my mother, and you're just crazy with fear and concern, but you can't do anything for them because your own mind is in so much turbulence. Okay? Because the focus isn't on the other person, it's on us. And that's when what they call compassion burnout happens. Yeah, when we can keep the focus on the other person, we may get physically tired, but we don't get mentally exhausted from the compassion. Yeah, but when we get mentally exhausted, I'm suffering, seeing them suffer. Yeah. So this is a hard one for parents because parents, worry so much about their kids, and small things that happen to your child, my child's in first grade and they spelled cat, K-A-T. Oh no, they'll never get into a good university. They won't have a good job. They're going to wind up on the streets. This is terrible. Your kid is 6 years old. Yeah. But parents, out of their love, which has degenerated into attachment, yeah, for their child, then their personal distress, goes berserky. The kid goes, it's okay, K-A-T, I'll use spell check, don't worry, mom and dad, I'll get through school, just relax.